But most importantly, for the people of your state, this great state, I will rescue the U.S. auto industry from obliteration. They're going to obliterate your auto industry. And anybody that votes for the head of the United Auto Workers, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's approved all electric cars. And you know, Elon, I love Elon Musk. Do we love him? I love him. And I'm constantly talking about electric cars, but I don't mean I'm totally for them, but whatever the market says, and if it's 10% of the market, 12%, 7%, 20%, whatever it is, it's okay. But you can't have 100% electric cars. And you know, so Elon endorsed me recently, the other day, actually. He's great. Elon Musk. He's a brilliant guy. Every time I call him, he's talking about, I got a new idea for a rocket. You have to hear this. No, it's true. You know, the first time I ever saw this, I'm watching television like 3 years ago, and I see a rocket engine, motor engine, come down landing, straight up in, no wings, no nothing, and it's landing. I thought I was seeing things. What is that? And it's landing on a barge in the middle of the ocean. And then another one comes down, and another one. I guess 4 of them came down, 3 or 4, and they land upright. I said, what the hell was that? I've never seen that before. Now, if that were government, you wouldn't see that for another 50 to 100 years. But it was Elon. Now, think of that. And I called him, and I've always had a good relationship with him, but I called him, and I said, what was that? He said, well, we saved the engines. We saved the engines because it's very expensive to build. So, I mean, it didn't take me long to figure that if you save them, that's good. But who the hell thought you could do that? No wings, no nothing. Just like these big, long, massive tubes. And they're landing gently right on the dot. I said, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And you say, how long would it take government to come up with that one? I don't think they ever heard of it. Perhaps they still haven't heard of it. But, you know, he's a very advanced person, and he's doing other things that are great, and so are others. We have to make life good for our smart people, you know? We have some smart people. We have to make life good for our smart people, and he's as smart as you get. But Elon endorsed me the other day, and I didn't even know this. He didn't even tell me about it. But he gives me $45 million a month. A month. Not 45 million. Gives me 45 million a month. And I talked to him just a little while ago to say I was coming here, how you doing? And he didn't even mention it. He didn't mention. I mean, other guys, they give you $2 and you got to take them to lunch. You got to wine them, dine them. No, he's a great guy, he really is. But, you know, he's never mentioned to me, why are you hitting the electric cars? Because he understands I'm not hitting it. I think it's incredible. I've had them, I've driven them, they're incredible. But they're not for everybody. Some people have to drive long distances. And they tend to be more expensive. And, you know, they'll probably be made in China because China has all of that material. We want to bring car manufacturing back. And what the deal with this thing with the all-electric cars in 6 years from now? It's ridiculous. You know, in the Midwest, they open up chargers. They opened up 8 chargers. You read about this. $9 billion they spent. For 8 chargers. That's like a gas pump. I guess it would be like the equivalent of a gas pump for electric, right? They spent $9 billion on 8 chargers. This is 8 little chargers. $9 billion. How do you do that? It would cost at that rate $5 trillion to create enough chargers so it could run. It doesn't work. The trucks either. I was with Swift, big Swift company. How many trucks are you on? 29,000, sir. 29,000? That's a lot of trucks. One of the biggest, I guess like the biggest. I think he's the biggest, right? And he said, they want to destroy our business. They want us to go all electric. I said, so what's wrong with electric? I said, if you take a big, beautiful, like Peterbilt or one of the great manufacturers, how many times would you have to stop from New York to Los Angeles? None, sir. We go right there. We have some left over. Really? That's with diesel. I said, what about if it's electric? We have 6 to 7 stops, about 3 hours each. So immediately he's saying, that's not working too well. He said, but there are other problems. He said, the truck is so much heavier that you'd have to rebuild every bridge in the country. That doesn't sound too good, right? And then the third thing, he said that the battery is so much bigger than a tank, a big tank for the diesel or for the gasoline, but the diesel mostly. It's so much bigger that most of our payload would be holding batteries. In other words, we wouldn't have any room for the product. So let's say you hear those three minor details. Typically, you would end the conversation, would say, that doesn't work. These people said, we don't care, we want you to go all electric. Can you believe these people? They're crazy. They're crazy. No, they're crazy. And they want boats to do the same thing. I was with in South Carolina, one of the biggest boat manufacturers of, smaller fishing boats from, let's say, 16 to 35 feet. And he said, we have a problem. They keep pushing, the beautiful outboard engines. You have Mercury and Evinrude, I guess they used to have. I don't know if they have it anymore. But those big, beautiful outboard engines they have, they work great. Or just interior engines run by a thing called gasoline. So he said they want us to figure out how to go all electric in a boat, right? All electric. I said, well, what is the problem? He said, we'd have to take the entire lower cabin, well, we have bedrooms, and we'd have to make that into a battery. But the bigger problem is, sir, it won't float because it's so heavy. It won't float. It won't float. And I always tell the story with well, what would you do? Because, my uncle was a great professor at MIT for 41 years, I think. He's the longest serving, Dr. John Trump, she knows. He was great, very smart. We have a very smart family, actually. But he was a great guy, and I always saw I was very interested in this, but the press kills me all the time. They say, he keeps talking about sharks. I don't. I tell an analogy. If I'm in a boat, it's all electric, and it starts to sink. I asked the guy, do you get electrocuted sitting over this? And then I say, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, do you? Because it's an analogy. I say, and if there's a shark about 10 yards away, right where they are, right where all the congressmen are, right over there, look at us. Well, they're sharks. They're sharks. If there's a shark about 10 yards away, do I get electrocuted or do I go with the shark? I said, because I will take electrocution all day long. Despite the environmentalists that say how wonderful sharks are. You ever hear these people? We had 3 killings by a shark this weekend, ripped people apart, and then you have the environmentalists going, well, they didn't mean to do it. They mistook them for a seal. They didn't want to hurt the child. No, I don't want that. Common sense, right? I mean, how about they catch a shark, vicious that they've been after, and they take him to a little deeper water and they put him back in? I wouldn't do that. Would anybody do that here? Let me ask you, this is Michigan. These guys wouldn't do it. But they always get on me. They say, why is he talking about electricity and sharks? What do they have? Well, they know exactly. It's sort of a cute little story. Do I take electrocution or do I take death by a shark? And I'll always take electrocution. But isn't it ridiculous? Think of it. Isn't it ridiculous? They want to make a boat that's far too heavy, that can barely float, and they're driving people out of business. They're destroying this country. They're stupidly destroying this country. The Army tanks are the other one. They want to make all electric. We make the best tanks in the world. They want to have them. So that as we go into a country to bomb the hell out of it, we will do it in an environmentally friendly way. Okay? And with an Army tank, again, the battery is very big, very heavy, and doesn't last long. You know what it is? It's an Army tank, and it's like you're pulling a wagon behind the Army tank. You're pulling a wagon like a child pulls a wagon, and it's loaded up with a battery. So we got to get back to common sense. The aircraft, too. They want to make our jet fighters a biofuel jet fighter that shows 18% less efficiency. That's the difference between winning and losing a fight. And you know what happens? I say, I'm not doing it. And we ended all of that stuff. They brought it back. We will end it on day one. We're not going to be doing that stuff. In 4 short years under my leadership, I did more for Michigan auto workers and manufacturers than any president in the history of our country. And just as I promised, I withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have totally destroyed your auto industry. I ended the disaster known as NAFTA. That was the worst trade deal ever made. That was the worst trade deal considered by him. That was so unfair to us with Mexico and Canada, the worst trade.